Welcome to Green Dot Daily. We're live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel, by the way. I'm Maria Marino, and today on the show, NHL picks and analysis with Tim Kalinowski, plus WNBA and MLB props with Sean Kerner. But we start with the NBA, where the experience level of the Celtics shined through as they swept the Eastern Conference Finals, despite the Pacers holding leads or being tied in the final minute during 3 of the 4 games. ECF MVP Jaylen Brown averaged 29.8 points per game in the series. And now Boston awaits the winner of the Western Conference Finals. Dallas has the 3-0 lead and is favored by 1.5 at home tonight at 8:30 Eastern. Majority of bets and money are on the T-Wolves, who lost by a point in Game 2 and 3 points in Game 3. As we bring in our NBA analyst, Sean Little, welcome back. We will discuss tonight's game in a moment, but first, how surprising was this sweep for a Pacers team that was in control for much of the series?
See, this is a tough question. It's not surprising because clearly we know the Boston Celtics are the superior group and have been the superior group all year long. And this was the first time this group for the Pacers has been to the Eastern Conference Finals. So surprised isn't the right word, but I am surprised it ended up being a 4-0 sweep with how the games were played. As you mentioned, Maria, the Pacers were very competitive in a lot of these games, and a lot of the stretches looked like the better team. And we knew they were going to have a lot of success offensively, but down the stretch, especially in games 3 and 4, they missed Tyrese Halliburton quite a bit with just decision-making and how they wanted to go about their business. It's tough when you play a fast offensive style of basketball, and then when it comes to crunch time, that last 5, even 3 minutes of the game, it's a lot easier. You make a lot less mistakes if you slow it down, but that's just not their brand of basketball, right? So they tried to continue to play fast in a lot of possessions that ended up with them turning the rock over, and that killed them in a lot of the games down the stretch. But if you want to go back to game 1, that's what really changed everything. Jaylen Brown hitting that 3 completely changed everything about the series. If the Pacers win that game 1, who knows what happens the rest of the series? I think we could easily see a 7-game series if they stole that game in Boston in game 1, but didn't shake like that. Jaylen Brown, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I know you mentioned him almost scoring 30 points a game, but it was how he did it. He shot 50% from the floor in every single game of the series. He was sensational. If you're going to get that Jaylen Brown and Tatum along with Drew Holiday playing like that, they're going to be extremely tough to beat no matter who it is.
Yeah, I think Jaylen Brown beat the Pacers at their own game. He was able to play just as fast and keep up. I think you made a great point, too, about the turnovers late in games for a team that plays very fast, even for Tyrese Halliburton, who played amazing in game 1, but, threw the ball away a little bit late. And it's unfortunate because I think with Halliburton healthy, the Pacers at least get a game. But once he went down, the sweep is a little bit less surprising, in my opinion. But looking ahead, you can find odds for the Celtics against a Western Conference opponent in the NBA Finals. Currently on DraftKings, we're seeing the Celts at -225 and the Mavs and T-Wolves each at +185. Is that price fair or foul?
That's another good question. I think, first of all, we have to see when the Mavs close out this series. If they do end up closing out this series against the Minnesota Timberwolves, I think that price gets a little longer if this goes 6 games, right? If they both sweep the Celtics and the Mavs and they get a bunch of time off, as we talked about and I mentioned earlier in a couple different spots, full 9 days off for the Celtics with the NBA Finals starting June 6th. If the Mavs close out tonight, it's 8 full days off. I think that number gets a little shorter if that is the case. I think the +185, depending on who it is, if it's Mavs or Timberwolves, I think either way, the longer the Celtics get to sit at home and rest, I think the shorter that number gets if you want to back one of the Western Conference teams.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it's interesting because I think a lot of people are of the opinion that the Mavs and maybe even the T-Wolves are, just as good as the Celtics, despite, the Celtics playing as well as they did all season. Both of these teams, and especially the Mavs, in my opinion, have a lot of weapons. Now, I think it's fair to say we expect the Mavs to make the NBA Finals. But do you think the T-Wolves can take a game, or are we staring at another sweep here?
No, I do think I gave it out on buckets. I don't. It's so tough to pick a side, especially with how close and how tight these games have been. I like the team total over for the Minnesota Timberwolves at over 104.5. I gave it out on buckets at 103.5. And a big part of that was Derek Lively is going to be off the floor. When he's off the floor for the Mavericks, they're just not as good of a basketball team when he's on it. Listen to some of these numbers. Now, the Mavs traded for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford on February 8th. From the start of the season until February 3rd, so right before that trade went down, Lively missed 13 games. They were 4-9 straight up. That's what prompted the trade. They had to go get some bigs and some other guys that can play D, and that's exactly what they did. Also, Lively really makes Luka Doncic's life easier. Listen to these numbers in the Timberwolves series. In 67 minutes with Derek Lively off the floor versus Timberwolves, Luka's net rating is minus 6.3. In the 55 minutes with Lively on the floor, it goes all the way up to plus 10.7 for Luka Doncic. When he's on the floor, Luka has a lot more options. He can go to lobs. He can go to corner threes with PJ and Derrick Jones Jr. And the usage rate goes down 32% to 36% when he's off the floor. So they need Derek Lively. He impacts. So if I had to pick a side, I would take Minnesota, but I do like the over 104.5 on the team total, purely on the fact I believe they get a couple extra easier buckets. And also Ant-Man Anthony Edwards is a lot. The less bigs that are on the floor, the easier it is for him to get to the cup, and that's what he wants to do anyway. That's what opens up the rest of his game, his jump shot. So I like them to get a few extra buckets, and I also just don't think they lay down, even though they're down 3-0. I'll take the team total over 104.5 for the Timberwolves.
Totally agree. It's been kind of similar to the Pacers in a sense where, the T-Wolves have been in this series for the most part, and now they have to take advantage of that absence of Derek Lively that you pointed out. So generally staying away from a side, leaning Minnesota, and definitely liking the Wolves team total over. Sean Little, thank you so much. We'll see you again later this week on GDD.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Delara, and I've got a couple of my favorite plays for today's Game 4 between the Dallas Mavericks and the Minnesota Timberwolves in the Western Conference Finals. First play that we're looking at is Luka Doncic over 8.5 rebounds. I would take this at 9.5 as well if you can get a plus number. Luka's been tremendous during the series, and now he's going to have to pick up even more slack with the injury to Derek Lively. And without Lively, we should see more minutes where Luka is looked at as the best Mavericks rebounder if Gafford is not on the floor. Without Lively, but with Gafford, Luka has averaged 10.4 rebounds per game this season, with 9+ in 7 of 8 games. This is likely because we see more minutes where Dallas either goes small, or we get some minutes from Dwight Powell or Maxi Kleber, neither of whom are necessarily great rebounds. While Luka's only averaged 7.7 rebounds on 11.7 chances during the series, the absence of Lively is a significant mitigating factor. Couple the history with the fact that he has played 40+ minutes in all 3 games this series, and I think that there's plenty of room for Luka to grab double-digit boards. I like him to go over 8.5 or 9.5 rebounds. For my second play, I'm looking at Anthony Edwards over 33.5 points plus rebounds. And no Lively matters here once again, as Ant should find much more success getting into the teeth of the Dallas defense, and losing Lively impacts the Mavericks defense and only leaves Daniel Gafford as a true rim protector. As for the rebounds, Ant is already averaging 8.3 per game on 13.7 chances. And in a must-win game, I expect Ant to leave it all out on the floor and be aggressive in his rebounding efforts. I like Ant to build off his strong Game 3 performance, 26 points and 9 rebounds, and exceed 33.5 PR in Game 4. So to recap, my 2 favorite plays for Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals are Luka Doncic over 8.5 rebounds and Anthony Edwards over 33.5 points plus rebounds. Best of luck on your wagers today, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays.
Our director of predictive analytics, Sean Kerner, is back with us on Green Dot Daily. Let's start with the WNBA. Really fun 3-game slate tonight. What's your favorite prop on the board?
Yeah, favorite WNBA prop of this slate is Kalia Copper of the Mercury to go under 4.5 rebounds. It's plus 102 at FanDuel. Everywhere else, this is in play. I don't think she's going to get 5 more rebounds against the Sun. She has stayed under this in 3 of 5 games this year, but the Sun are the toughest team to rack up rebounds against. They're only allowing 29 per game on the season. If you look at the second best or second toughest team to get rebounds against Liberty, it's 4.5 rebounds lower than them. There's just a whole host of factors why that is. You know, the Sun play at the slowest pace in the league. They get to the free throw line at the highest rate in the league. And they take the second fewest 3-point attempts in the league. And that will hurt Copper specifically, because you know, she gets 50% of her rebounds off missed 3-pointers this season. So a lot of things going against her here to get rebounds. I'm projecting her closer to 4 with around a 61% chance of staying under 4.5 boards here.
Yeah, I really like this one. I think of Connecticut. I think specifically of Alyssa Thomas and Brianna Jones. They tend to rack up a lot of rebounds, yeah. AT in particular. And by the way, while I'm hoping you know, Copper isn't grabbing a ton of boards, I am also hoping that she's scoring a lot. I personally bet the Mercury is covering this spot. I explained why on the Buckets WNBA pod, but yeah, Connecticut favored by 8.5. That game tips at 7 Eastern, as does the rematch between the Sparks and Fever. We had a good game Friday night, Fever getting their first win. They are now laying 4.5 at home. I think this is a tough one for a side, but you like a total here.
Yeah, I feel like we were just talking about this matchup because it just happened a few days ago, but I like the Sparks Fever to go under 165.5 points. Some books are up to 166. Obviously, would prefer that if you have access to that. But, you know, these two teams combined for 151 points. You know, my expected score for that game was a bit higher, but still only 155. So now the total is a point higher. I don't get it. You know, we were talking about this game, the total is 164.5. But the Sparks are a team, I had mentioned it on Friday as well, that they're a team I flagged due for some you know, negative shooting regression incoming and lower scoring games going forward. The Fever as well, you know, we've talked about the Fever having the most difficult schedule in the WNBA. That's why I kind of liked them last week at -1.5. One of the things that they've had to face is the highest free throw percentage allowed. Teams have shot 85% at the line against them. That's due to them playing so many good teams. Obviously, that's something that's outside of their control. So I think going forward, we're going to see fewer made free throws against them, which will lower scoring. And the Sparks, you know, have the second lowest free throw shooting on the season. So I think that's going to help that going forward. So this is still a game I'm projecting. I projected last week 163. I'm still projecting this 163. So I think we're getting a couple points in value here on the under.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to it. And, you know, I do expect, once again, a very competitive game, a game that both teams feel like they need to get. And so I think you are going to see a really inspired effort defensively from both of these teams. But let's move over to baseball now. And want to brag on you for just a second, Sean, because not only have you hit 8 straight MLB player props, but you've also hit 11 of your last 12. So on fire, just burn it up. I know you hate when we call out your insane record,
no,
but you know, sometimes we have to. But
well, and I will say, like, none of these have been a sweat. It's been unreal. We're like, they've just been easy. I don't know what's going on. I had a rough stretch before that where I was losing some close ones, and now all these, like, none of them have been a sweat. It's been fun.
Who would have thought you could be on fire and not sweating at the same time?
Yeah.
So 1 point for me for cheesy jokes. What about you? What is your MLB prop for today?
So we're fading a stud pitcher here in Cole Reagans of the Royals to go under 7.5 strikeouts at -146 at FanDuel. Other books like DraftKings are offering this at 6.5 at plus money. I still like the under there as well. So just, you know, take the under wherever you can. But FanDuel specifically is offering 7.5. So get that while you can. But, you know, like I mentioned, Reagans is one of the better pitchers in the game. He's coming off a 12 strikeout game. So it's tough to fade him here, but I think his market is a bit inflated here. His fastball specifically is due for some put away regression. He has a 27% put away rate with his fastball this year, despite having just a 26% whiff rate. Whenever you see a put away rate higher than whiff rate, that typically means they're due for some regression there. Would expect him to strike out closer to 21% of hitters with that pitch going forward. And the Twins specifically had the third lowest whiff rate against fastballs. So this is just a great spot for him to see, some of that regression that's coming. So, I still think he's going to strike out a ton of hitters. I'm projecting him closer to 6 here. But the fact that we're getting, 7.5 can't go against that. So I'm projecting this closer to -220 when we're talking about 7.5 strikeouts to the under. When it comes to 6.5, like I said, I'm still showing value there, about -130, -140 on the under. So if you can get plus odds at that, I like that as well.
Well, I certainly hope the trend of you not sweating continues here tonight. But in some other news, did want to mention that I'm sure you've heard MLB umpire Angel Hernandez is retiring. Did develop a bit of a reputation for missing calls over the years, especially more recently on social media with some criticism. But what is your take on this news of Hernandez hanging it up?
Yeah, I agree with everyone being, happy he's retiring. He made a lot of controversial calls. I guess, Bryce Harper specifically comes to mind as a player that's probably happy he's retiring. For some reason, I always ended up being beneficiary on some of his bad calls. If you recall, I think it was about a month ago, I had JP France over on his strikeout prop, and Angel Hernandez made, I think it was 3 straight worst calls over the last 4 years in succession with JP France. So I benefited from that. So when I was watching that game, I was actually very happy with Angel Hernandez. So, in that regard, maybe I'm sad to see him go, but I agree. I think just his inconsistency, his controversial calls and all that, I think baseball will be better off without it.
Wow, but interesting take in the sense that you're not necessarily rejoicing because it was just an angle that you would use in your handicapping.
Yeah, you have to know if he's the umpire, there's going to be some bad calls. How can you benefit from that? So JP France, he was struggling and he threw 3 straight pitches, 2.5 feet outside, and he gave him those calls. Unfortunately, it didn't really help my prop. I believe JP France, that was only a strikeout of the game, so we still lost the bet, but it wasn't Angel Hernandez's fault on that regard. I guess it was my capping. But in that, I don't have any bad stories because, again, it seems like all those bad calls went my way. So, I was happy that he was calling those games.
Well, thank you for setting the record straight. And it's somewhat of a glass half full approach, not just in baseball, but with officiating across any sport. Know who the official is, especially the the more well-known ones, and take that information and use it. All right, Sean Kerner, we always appreciate you taking the time on this busy Tuesday. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And if you're looking to bet on college baseball, Colin Wilson discussed his favorite future with Mike Calabrese on BBOC.
Yeah, right now, as we're recording this, I think Dallas Baptist plus 275 to win the Tucson Regional is the best bet that's on the board. Their starting pitcher, their ace anchor, Ryan Johnson, is one of the best in the nation. The guy has racked up over, I think, 140 strikeouts in 100 innings. It's pretty amazing what he has been able to do. But statistically, if you look at all the teams, Arizona, West Virginia, Grand Canyon, and Dallas Baptist, only one of them has a complete resume from you talk about road strength of schedule, you talk about road RPI, you talk about slugging, you talk about what the pitching staff does. It's all Dallas Baptist, and they do play a pretty tough non-conference schedule. Like I said, they've already beaten Arizona twice here. So plus 275 on a Dallas Baptist Patriots team that's beaten this regional host twice. Yes, please. That's the value that I want right now.
Over to hockey, and going into the Eastern Conference Finals, despite the Rangers having home ice, the Panthers were -120 favorites to win the series. That ballooned to -300 after a Game 1 road win. They remained the favorites, even with the Rangers winning game 2. But now that New York stole game 3 in Florida, winning back-to-back overtime games to go up 2-1 in the series, it's the Rangers at -175 to advance, while the Panthers are at +145, looking to tie things up at home. As we welcome Tim Kalinowski back to the show. So both the East and West finals are 2-1 at this point. Rangers in front in the East, Dallas with the lead in the West. Which team do you like to even their series, Florida or Edmonton?
Well, honestly, Maria, I would say I like them both, considering they're both home favorites. Identical spots here. Teams down 2-1. They're going to be home favorites in game 4. But if I had to pick, I'd probably go with Florida, and that's really just based on the odds, them being a -165 favorite heading into game 4, Edmonton a shorter favorite. And also too, Florida, they really outplayed the Rangers in game 3. And, it's hard to, say momentum goes from one game to another, but a lot of people are expecting the Panthers to bring that same type of intensity, dictating the pace of the game into game 4. And that's being reflected in the line here. So if I had to choose, I would go with Florida.
Yeah, it makes sense. Notice I use the term the Rangers stole one. My father, who is a Rangers fan, actually texted me yesterday, call the cops with a cop emoji. We stole one, which I thought was really cute. But yeah, they were both overtime wins as mentioned. So super close series, but game 4 tonight, who you got?
Yeah, it's funny. I just said Florida. I would pick to win this series, but in terms of game 4 tonight, look, your dad, he was right? The Rangers stole game 3. It sounds like he's the type of guy too that gets a good discount at a store and walks out and says, "Oh, we were stealing." I love that one too. I still bring that one up when I can, but the thing about the Rangers, their MO has kind of been stealing games. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that they play. They get really good goaltending from Shesterkin. And then they also, they're killers on the power play. And it hasn't been totally reflected in this series, but the Rangers are extremely opportunistic and they can make teams pay no matter if the ice is tilted against them or not. We saw it at times in the Carolina series. So I look at the prices for game 4 and I like the Rangers at +140. I hate it because I have a Panthers future to win the Stanley Cup. And, the more I dove into it, you're just paying a tax here for Florida because you think they're going to tie the series and it's like a must win. It's time for them to do it. But I'll just remind you that road teams in these past 2 playoffs continue to crush it. They're 89-73. That's 54.9%. You'd be winning a whole boatload of cash if you were betting $100 a game. The Rangers are also 5-1 on the road in this playoffs. And the Panthers, the last 2 years, are only 9-7 at home. So part of me wants to just bet Florida and be like, I think they're going to do it because they're going to tie the series. But to me, that's not a great handicap, that's not a great reason to do something. So if I was just looking at the price, I'd be betting the Rangers here. And I think I might be getting that way.
Yeah, sounds it. And then, speaking of the series prices, it seems like if you think the Rangers are going to win, but you haven't actually played a future on them, you might as well just bet them to win tonight and go from there. Now, Tim, before we let you go, we have a special message for you here on GDD.
Very nice, Maria. That's very, very nice. I appreciate it. I thought I was getting out of here without anybody knowing it was my birthday. And apparently that failed. You guys do a good job. The production team, they're always on it. I don't know why I thought I could get in and out without that. So I will say I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. And apparently you're a big dog lover. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I think it meant underdogs. I think that's actually what that meant. I didn't think it meant real dogs. I took it as underdogs.
Or maybe it's just our production team trolling you because you're not a big fan of dogs. But look, you must have expected this knowing that our producer, Barbara, she's very big on birthdays. So happy birthday.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Bridie. Thank you, all of you. Thanks for the dogs. Really appreciated it.
All right, friend. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate it.
Later. Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following green.daily in the Action app. We keep track so you don't have to. And that's all for this episode of Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks so much for hanging out. And remember, the show is back tomorrow at 3 Eastern on the Action app and YouTube channel. We'll see you then.